This entire breakdown is based on the work of Professor Vihar Kiskinov. Today, we're diving into Article 99 of the EU's landmark AI Act. Now, this isn't just some random clause buried in a massive document. You can think of it as the enforcement engine, the very mechanism that takes all those important principles and turns them into real, legally binding rules for anyone creating or using AI in Europe.
So, here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to look at why Article 99 is called the teeth of the Act. Then, we'll track the journey that shaped this penalty system. After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how the fines actually work. And to wrap it all up, we'll look at the bigger picture of what it really means to enforce responsible AI.
Okay, let's jump right into our first section, the AI Act's teeth. And that title's no exaggeration. You know, without a strong way to enforce them, regulations can just end up as well-meaning suggestions. Article 99 is what gives these guidelines their power, turning them into solid, enforceable rules with some very serious consequences if you don't comply.
At its core, Article 99 is built on three key ideas. The fines have to be effective, meaning they actually have to make companies comply. They need to be proportionate, so the punishment fits the crime. And, maybe most importantly, they have to be dissuasive. The penalties have to be big enough that companies can't just write them off as a cost of doing business.
Now, in our second section, let's look at how this whole framework came to be. It didn't just appear out of nowhere. No, it's the result of a really careful and pretty long legislative process that was tweaked and refined over several years of intense debate.
This timeline here gives you a quick look at that journey. It really kicked off in 2021 with the first proposal from the European Commission. Then, in 2023, the European Parliament stepped in with some big changes to really beef up enforcement. All of that work led to the final act we have now, published in 2024.
And this chart really shows you where the big changes happened. First, look at the max fine for prohibited AI. It jumped from 30 million euros, or 6% of global turnover, to a whopping 35 million, or 7%. But just as important is what happened for smaller companies. Protections for SMEs and startups went from just a vague mention to a clear, explicit cap on fines. That's a huge deal.
So you might be wondering why all these changes. Well, they weren't random. They were all about hitting specific goals. You can see a real push to strengthen enforcement, to protect innovation by helping out smaller companies, to make sure the process is fair, and of course, to make sure the rules are the same all across the EU.
All right, Section 3. This is where we get down to the brass tacks of how these penalties actually work. It's not a one-size-fits-all system. It's actually built on a very clear tiered structure that matches different levels of fines to different kinds of violations.
So let's start at the very top. This is the highest tier, and it's reserved for the absolute most serious violations. We're talking up to 35 million euros, or 7% of a company's total worldwide annual turnover. This is for using prohibited AI, things like social scoring by governments, or AI systems designed to manipulate and exploit people. These are the things the EU has decided are completely off-limits. The next tier down is still incredibly serious, up to 15 million euros, or 3% of global turnover. This category is much broader. It covers a whole range of other obligations for pretty much everyone in the AI supply chain, the providers, the importers, and the ones deploying high-risk AI systems.
And the final tier, at up to 7.5 million euros, or 1%, sends a very clear message: don't even think about misleading the authorities. This penalty is specifically for providing information that's incorrect, incomplete, or deliberately misleading when they come knocking.
Now this is a really crucial piece of the puzzle, designed to protect smaller innovators. For SMEs and startups, the fine is capped at whichever number is lower, the fixed cash amount or the percentage of their turnover. What this does is create a kind of safety net, ensuring a penalty is still a serious deterrent but doesn't completely crush a young, growing company.
You see, handing out a fine isn't just about picking a number out of a hat. Regulators have to go through a very careful evaluation. They look at the violation itself. How bad was it, and how long did it go on? They consider intent. Was this a deliberate act or an honest mistake? They look at what the company did afterward. Did they cooperate and try to fix it? And finally, they take the company's size into account. It's all about making sure the final penalty is fair.
All right, for our final section, let's zoom out a bit and look at how all these pieces come together to actually enforce responsible AI in the real world. This means understanding the principles, the key players involved, and what this all means for the future.
This really gets to the heart of the challenge for regulators. It's a constant balancing act.
On one side, you have dissuasiveness. The penalties have to be scary enough to stop bad behavior before it starts. But on the other side, you have proportionality. The punishment has to be fair and fit the specific situation. The whole enforcement system is designed to walk that tightrope.
So who's actually on the field making sure these rules are followed? Well, it's really a team effort. The day-to-day investigators are the national market surveillance authorities in each EU country. The European Commission keeps an eye on the big picture to make sure things are consistent. And the new AI office provides that critical tech expertise to help everyone understand these complex systems.
And that brings us to the big final question. The EU AI Act, with Article 99, has definitely built a powerful and detailed penalty system, probably the most advanced in the world. But in a field that changes not in years, but sometimes in months, can a fixed set of rules really keep up with the pace of innovation? That right there is the fundamental challenge for everyone, regulators, innovators, and all of us, as we try to figure out the future of AI.